All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining the November 3rd Homeless Coordinating and Financing Council meeting. It is 1:04 p.m., so I will go ahead and call this meeting to order. I'm Lourdes Castro Ramirez, and I serve as the Secretary of California's Business, Consumer Services, and Housing Agency, and I also serve as the Chair of the Homeless Coordinating and Financing Council. Before we begin with roll call in the meeting, I'd like to just share a few key updates, items that are relevant to today's meeting. First, I'd like to acknowledge that this is our last council meeting of the year. It's incredible. We're now basically entering into the holiday season and closing out 2021. I look forward, of course, to the updates from our council members. As you all know, council members provide also detailed reports on the progress that is being made in their respective departments and across the state. I'm very proud of the work that is currently occurring and a lot of rich information. So I encourage you all to really, make time to read through those reports. But today, given that it's our last meeting of the year, we will make time during the meeting to reflect and look back at all that has been accomplished in 2021, from the adoption of the action plan to prevent and end homelessness, which is still very much at the center of our work, to the establishment of the homeless data integration system and a number of other items. So thank you, council members, for your leadership, for your work. And I look forward to the presentation on the progress that you're making across your departments and agencies. I will take sort of a point of privilege here to mention and really to reshare with everyone that has joined us that, of course, we're thrilled that in this year's budget, the governor and the state legislature adopted a historic budget with over $22 billion to continue to address the housing affordability crisis in our state, but also to double down on addressing homelessness comprehensively. Of the $22 billion, $12 billion was set aside for addressing homelessness comprehensively. And within the $12 billion funding, there's a $50 million in funding for a demonstration and innovative approach to addressing encampments. And just last week, HCFC released an RFA requesting proposals from cities and counties and continuums on innovative demonstration projects that bring together services and housing options for persons living in encampments. We're excited with this new demonstration grant program and look forward to receiving a number of applications from across the state. Applications are due December the 31st. And of course, HCFC staff is available to be able to answer questions. There will be additional information provided during the course of today's meeting. I also would like to acknowledge that Governor Newsom signed a very comprehensive set of housing and homelessness bills, almost 36 housing and homelessness related bills that help to accelerate the production of affordable housing and also help to continue to increase the coordination and the partnership between state agencies as we address homelessness. The most significant bill to this council is AB 1220. AB 1220 will reform this council into the California Interagency Council on Homelessness. And so starting January of 2022, this HCFC council will be renamed, and the governance structure will include 2 co-chairs, Secretary Galley from the California Health and Human Services Agency will be joining us. I'm so excited to be able to co-chair the council with him. And so between now and January, we will be working very closely with my colleague, Secretary Galley, as we prepare for establishing this new council. As part of this transition, it also, of course, involves a change to the council membership. The council membership will now include director-level representatives, and we also will be creating an advisory committee. So we're excited and looking forward to standing up this advisory committee. A letter from the HCFC team to our stakeholders was released last month, providing additional details, including additional information on the focus and the scope of the new council. I will note at the end of this meeting that it is very important that we acknowledge all of the good work and everything that this council has done to get us this far. You mentioned, of course, the action plan to prevent and end homelessness, very transformational in terms of bringing us together with a focus. And I'm very much committed to making sure that we build on the success and the progress of the HCFC Council. And so I thank you all so much for being part of that progress and for really laying a strong foundation, a foundation that will help this new Interagency Council on Homelessness be able to advance a robust agenda around homelessness. It's also incredibly important that I shared with you again that it is important that we do everything possible to keep ourselves healthy and safe, and that we continue to do everything possible to work in partnership with our many continuums of care and homeless service providers and local leaders in protecting individuals experiencing homelessness against the pandemic and the COVID-19 virus. We are still very much involved in providing direct support and relief. And so I want to acknowledge all of the great work that is happening in that space. As you all know, our meetings will continue to be held virtually, partly because we're still very much in this emergency. And I have to say that I think we've done a very good job in being able to continue to get the business of the council done in this environment. And many thanks and kudos to the staff for being able to assist us with the technology and assist us with being able to function under this new environment. With that, we are ready to get started. We have a great agenda today. We will have an update from the HCFC staff on the work in the Housing First space. And we also, of course, will have an opportunity to look back and reflect on the good work of this council through highlights and a review of the action plan. I think we said from the beginning that this action plan was not going to be an action plan that was just in writing and still, but it was an action plan that was very much a living document to guide our work. And so there's been a lot of great progress, and we'll have an opportunity to dive into that. We also, of course, will be spending time having each council member reflect on their achievements and the work of their departments and agencies. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Evan to lead with roll call, and then we'll go ahead and get started with the second item on the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Secretary. So I'd like to call for a roll. Council Chair Lourdes Castro Ramirez.
Here.
Council Vice Chair Emilio Ramirez.
Here.
Councilmember Amy Anderson.
Here.
Councilmember Russell Atterbury.
Here.
Councilmember Alexis Berries.
Here.
Councilmember Gina Bucchieri Harrington.
Here.
Councilmember Corinne Buchanan.
Here.
Councilmember J.C. Cooper. Councilmember Gail Gilman. Councilmember Tina Johnson Hall.
Here.
Councilmember Jody Ketcheside.
Here.
Councilmember Jennifer Loving.
Here.
Councilmember Gary McCoy. Councilmember Tokes Omishakin.
Present.
Councilmember Rebecca Ruan O'Shaughnessy. Councilmember Lindsay Tornatore. Councilmember Joe Ukashiba. And Councilmember Gustavo Velasquez.
This is Josh Rosa with the Department of Housing and Community Development. Unfortunately, Director Velasquez had a urgent conflict come up and is unable to join. So I'm just listening in on his behalf and available for any discussion among council members that might be helpful.
Thank you very much. So we have 11 council members present, 7 absent. We do have a quorum. Secretary?
Thank you, Evan. Thank you very much. Evan, will you go ahead and review the logistics and also the informational item and public comment portion?
Certainly, Secretary. So members of the public who wish to comment on an agenda item may do so when prompted. For those connected through the internet, please take a moment to locate the raised hand icon on your screen. This will be used to signal that you wish to comment. For those joining us by telephone only, you may press *9 to indicate that you'd like to comment. You will then be called on and have 3 minutes to make your comment. There will be an opportunity for public comment before the council takes action on any item, as well as an open public comment portion toward the end of the meeting. Secretary?
Great. Thank you, Evan. All right. So turning to item number 2, the adoption of the meeting summary from the September 22nd, 2021 council meeting. The summary is included in the packet. Council members and the public have been provided with a draft summary. Are there any corrections or any comments? If not, if I can entertain a motion.
I'll move
Motion to
approval.
adopt.
I'll second. It's Amy.
Okay, it's been moved in second. Roll call.
Certainly. Council Chair Lourdes Castro Ramirez.
Yes.
Yes. Council Vice Chair Emilio Ramirez.
Yes.
Councilmember Amy Anderson.
Yes.
Councilmember Russell Atterbury.
Yes.
Councilmember Alexis Berries.
Yes.
Councilmember Gina Bukieri Harrington.
Yes.
Councilmember Corinne Buchanan.
Yes.
Councilmember Tina Johnson Hall.
Yes.
Councilmember Jody Ketcheside.
Yes.
Councilmember Jennifer Loving.
Yes.
And Councilmember Tokes Omishakin.
Yes.
Yes, 11 votes in favor. The motion does pass. Secretary?
Thank you, Evan. Item number 3, Housing First update. I will go ahead and turn this over to Executive Officer of HCFC, Julie Lowe.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you, Secretary. Quick updates around our Housing First work. A little bit of background. As many will, for those of you who are in attendance in some of our early meetings, we conducted a round of Housing First checklist among state-funded programs in the 2018 and 2019 year for those departments represented at the council. A little bit of background on this, on the Housing First statutory requirements. It is part of our enabling statute and very much in the DNA of the Homeless Coordinating and Financing Council. And within that statute is a requirement that all housing programs, as stated in the statute and has since been, which has since been added to, are required to comply with the components of Housing First. A couple of the core components are displayed on the slide. They are around tenant screening, types of services to assure that housing first does not mean housing only. And also, I think first and foremost, that housing be low barrier. A full list of those requirements are written in the statute and more importantly, included within the checklist that the council developed in 2018 to conduct this process. Next slide, please. Couple things. We will be conducting another round in the coming months. And to date, we have been working with our council departments to identify those programs that currently fall under the statute, as well as new programs established between 2019 and 2021. And of course, as we mentioned in the last council meeting, there was a provision in AB 1220 that now includes emergency sheltering programs into the Housing First statute. Again, the checklist will cover core statutory components of Housing First. Next slide, please. Displayed is a sample of how we'll be doing this. Good news for those council departments. Last time we did this, we sent around literal paper templates and our PDFs for folks to complete. We did update that template to make that a bit more seamless and a little bit more user-friendly, and we'll be collecting those checklists in digital format through a web-enabled form. Next slide, please. Currently, we went from about 25 programs in the last round to 33 programs across the 10 state entities that we've been in contact with. We will continue to conduct follow-ups directly with department staff so that we can work through this process. So a couple changes from the last set of Housing First checklists that we conducted in 2018 and 19. I think the state, by and large, has moved further into Housing First compliance, and therefore we will be providing a written report that summarizes the extent to which folks have addressed anything that came up in the prior round, but also a status on what we've concluded based on the current round of Housing First checklist for the 33 programs. We anticipate that that report will be due to the council next year. Next slide, please. Don't strain your eyes. This material is available with the meeting materials, but this is a full list of those programs. And again, the way we derive this list is by reaching out directly to departments to inquire about the full list that should be under the purview of this work. Next slide, please. And so with that, quickly, we'll talk through next steps. We'll continue our outreach, as I mentioned, and we'll follow up with recommendations based on previous checklists so that we can report out on that. In December, we'll be distributing final instructions as well as links to that checklist to council to departments. Between January and March, we will be working with departments to assist in the completion of those checklists, and the checklist will be due in March. We'll be reporting out on the outcome of those checklists mid-2020. And with that, happy to take any questions about this process.
Thank you, Julie. And just inviting council members if you all have any questions. It looks like Amy Anderson. Go ahead, Amy.
Thanks, Julie. Appreciate that report. I'm curious about whether the checklist tool and then the completed assessments are available on the website so that the public has access kind of to those evaluations once they're completed.
Sure, Amy, just understanding the question, is this about the prior checklist or the future checklist?
Oh, either or.
Oh, okay. Easy peasy on the prior. All checklists that were submitted to the council are available on our website as part of meeting materials. In the 2018-19 range, I will recommend that we did one entity a meeting, and so that might be spread out. but that is currently available. For future completed checklists, we will be making that available as an appendix to our a summary, what I assume will be a summary report of sorts. And so to your, I think the simple answer is yes, they will be available.
Okay. Yeah, I think that that's great and important for us to be doing, just to demonstrate accountability, right? That that's not just an internal assessment, that those materials are there for people to confirm that, you know, the adequacy of our assessments. So, and I guess I just want to say that I appreciate you kind of returning us to our roots, Julie, with this topic, because you know, while the council really started with a narrow focus, I feel as a former you know, developer of supportive housing, feel like it's a really important way to continue to affirm our commitment to, you know, ending homelessness and not just, you know, moving people off of streets, right? That the goal is to get people into permanent long-term housing.
Amy, thanks for highlighting that, and I think we're very much in agreement. And I will flag that I think we'd planned to do another round of this earlier, and just in response to the COVID crisis, we just, you know, I think it got displaced just a little bit. As soon as we were able to return, we will. So thank you again for raising the importance of this, Amy.
Okay, I don't see any additional questions. We don't need, this is not an action item, this is an informational item. So thank you very much, Julie. If there are no additional questions, we're going to go ahead and move on to item number 4, which is the adoption of the HCFC Action Plan Report. This is an update reflecting the commitments and the progress that has been made by the various departments that help shape this action plan to prevent and end homelessness. I will turn it over to Julie Lowe to guide us through this item. Thank you.
Thanks, Secretary. And can you please advance the slide, Evan? So sort of following in the theme of reflection on core, pretty fundamental things that the council has been able to achieve to date. I am thrilled today, and I'll pass it on to one of the HCFC staff members who is responsible for leading the development of the report that we're presenting. The draft report is attached to the meeting materials, also available on our website. So a little bit of level setting on where we are. So earlier this year in April, March/April, when this council approved the action plan, the approval came with the requirement to do annual reporting. You'll all recall that there were 89 particular activities that the departments represented here submitted across 5 action areas under 15 objectives. And within those, staff across the state worked to provide specific, measurable, actionable items that can be included in the action plan. We are currently providing a report that shows the status of those items in relation to any of those actions that were projected to take place in the fiscal year 2021. A couple things. I think this is our first time out, and we had no idea what was going to happen. We knew that it was important to connect the dots between the intention and the commitment, and to understand the extent to which we were able to complete those objectives. But what happened is that we produced a 60 some odd page report that I'll turn to Cody with in just a moment here, but really want to recognize staff across state departments represented here at the HCFC for their diligent work in providing incredibly detailed information. And I think one of the things that it lifts up for us is that while a lot of work needs to be done, currently there is a lot of work underway. And so with that, I will pass it to an HCFC team member, Cody Seeger, who is our Interim Director of Research, to present our findings. Cody?
Great. Thanks, Julie. And thank you all for having me today. I'm excited to share a bit about the fiscal year 2021 Action Plan Implementation Progress Report with you all. And so I'll briefly go through some of the information about how we created this report, how it's structured, and then provide a sample of some of the highlights from fiscal year 2021, as well as priorities for the current fiscal year. And at the end, we'll have plenty of time for questions or discussion before voting on the adoption of this report. So on the next slide, we've outlined the process by which we created this report. It's a little small, but basically in July 2021, HCFC reached out to staff from all 13 reporting departments and agencies to request updates on progress toward all of their FY 2021 activities. In August, we collected responses from the departments and we worked with them to gather the most relevant and useful information for the report. Then we compiled all the updates and attempted to summarize them as cohesively as possible, but without losing the important nuances in program implementation or outcomes. In October, we sent our draft report out for feedback. We redrafted it to incorporate revisions, and we sent it out to you all, to the council, to review. And now here we are. And so the next slide looks at the details of these responses. So overall, we received 82 responses across 58 distinct activities slated for implementation during fiscal year 2021. This was a 100% response rate. So a big thank you again to all the staff at your departments who helped us put this together. And those departments are listed right here on the right. And you can see the breakdown of activities in this table, which illustrates that the majority of activities were in Action Area 1 relating to strengthening our systems to better prevent and end homelessness in California. However, there were also substantial activities related to implementing funding in each of the other action areas, so those are quite significant as well. And next, I'll just quickly go over the structure of this report. So the report includes 4 major sections of new information. First, there are highlights of the accomplishments that we pulled from the updates and case studies that all the departments sent us. And while these don't represent all of the work completed in this fiscal year, they do attempt to help give a sense of the work completed in each action area. And so may be especially useful as sort of a summary of the report. And we're going to go through some of those highlights today. The second section of the report collects baseline data for key measurements in order to help us assess our progress in preventing and ending homelessness going forward. And this section also includes a comparison of California's data to national and regional trends in homelessness, as well as a racial equity analysis within some of our key measures. The third section is really the bulk of the report, which add up to those 60 pages Julie talked about. And it goes through and provides updates for each activity in order of action area and objective. And while we couldn't include all the details from every department's response, those responses were very rich. We attempted to preserve, as I said, much of the information about outcomes as possible in order to retain a lot of the nuance in those updates. And then the last section just pulls activities slated for implementation during this fiscal year that we identified as being high priority. We'll go through some of those briefly here as well. Okay, so going into the highlights, the exciting part. I'll start by saying this is only a sample of even just the highlights section of our report. So I'll go through these, relatively quickly one by one, but just know there's a lot more really important information in there as well. Also, we tried to collect as up-to-date of information as possible, but since many of these programs are ongoing or have different reporting cycles, these exact numbers may already be out of date. However, we still think that they're useful in illustrating sort of the magnitude of the state's work overall. All right, starting with rent relief. As of October 19th, BCSH and HCD have partnered to serve over 75,000 households with nearly $1.7 billion paid or approved for payment. CDSS helped 50 counties and 2 tribes secure over 16,000 rooms with Project Roomkey, serving over 42,000 individuals. Through HomeKey, HCD supported over 100 housing projects to bring nearly 6,000 housing units online across the state, including over 4,800 units of permanent housing. HCFC grantees spent the entirety of their HEAP funds, totaling $500 million. And HCFC also began monitoring HAP 1 grants and awarding another $350 million in HAP 2 funding. Moving right along, the California Community College Chancellor's Office assisted over 500 students experiencing homelessness or housing insecurity through 14 grants to community colleges across the state. CDE continued to administer new and ongoing funding, as well as educational opportunities to help support students experiencing homelessness. CDCR continued implementing the Returning Home Well initiative, which in part provides housing services to Californians returning home from prisons. DHCS provided essential funding through whole person care, which was used in at least 9 counties to expand Project Roomkey efforts. And through the Special Needs Housing program, Cal HFA financed 296 permanent supportive housing units. And then, okay, this next slide is our last of the highlights, I promise. But as I said, there are plenty more where this came from. So we hope that this, will incentivize you to go dig into the report and learn a little bit more. Cal OES helped communities access federal reimbursements for their Project Room Key programs, and also continued managing grants for victims of crime experiencing homelessness. The California Tax Credit Allocation Committee provided priority in tax credit applications for projects serving people experiencing homelessness. Caltrans has worked with people experiencing homelessness to remove barriers to employment. It's actually extended offers of employment to at least 60 people experiencing homelessness. CalVet made awards to 16 projects through the Veterans Housing and Homelessness Prevention Program, building 421 units of affordable, supportive, or transitional housing for veterans. And last but not least, HCFC launched the Homeless Data Integration System, which brings together data on individuals seeking homelessness services from continuums of care across the state in order to create a fuller picture of who experiences homelessness in California than we've ever had before. Okay, that was a barrage of information, to be sure, but I hope everyone can see that from even just this sample of highlights from the past year, the state has done an enormous amount of work toward preventing and ending homelessness. Capturing it all is a challenging task, but we hope this report gets us close. And looking forward to this fiscal year, many of our priorities include expanding existing programs and continuing to strengthen the work we do together as a state. And while activities from every department are not represented here, some of the priorities include, starting 5 statewide working groups and a lived experience advisory board to provide more insight and align our strategy around our work as a state, reviewing best practices and providing funding to address the needs of those living in encampments, implementing Cal AIM, just a small one there, expanding Home Key and continuing Project Room Key, revising our Housing First checklist as we discussed earlier, and continuing to implement Housing is Key. And last, we plan to update the action plan in 2022 to include new activities and updated performance measures for some activities. So with that, I want to thank you all very much for listening and for reading through our report. Before we take questions, I also want to give a big thank you to all the HCFC staff, as well as our consultant, Matthew Doherty, who helped write this report and get us where we are with it today. It was a huge effort, and I'm excited that we've helped create one of the most comprehensive accounts of the state's work towards preventing and ending homelessness to date. And with that, I'll turn it back to Secretary Lourdes Castro Ramirez to facilitate input from the council members and request adoption of this document.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Cody and Julie. Let's go ahead and open it up for questions or comments from council members. Truly, impressive work, as Jennifer mentioned, a great report and excellent work by everyone. So thank you all so much, but let's go ahead and open it up. Any questions or comments?
And Secretary, it looks like we have had one additional council member has joined us. So Gail Gilman, if you're here, you just let us know that you're here, that you're present.
Present.
Thank you so much.
Welcome, Gail. Okay. Questions, comments?
Can I ask a question?
Yes, of course.
So that list was, first of all, I mean, what a year, right? And what everyone has been through, and the work that the state has done to push out these additional resources has been really amazing. I mean, on the ground, we can just attest to how much this has all mattered. And so I guess I have 2 questions. One is, what would you say something that you wish would have happened that didn't? And also, what are you worried about the most now going forward?
I'm happy to take that. And so thank you for the kind words. A couple things that I think in the development of this report that we had wished we'd done a little bit better is think through, at least for HCFC, we committed many actions. And so I think when we think about sort of sequencing activities and just taking on a lot of actions, there are a couple spots where we didn't quite make the mark. We were able to report on that, and some of that is just the constraints of timing and unexpected things. So I think with anything, when you make a commitment, you regret if it has to be delayed or deferred. I don't think it doesn't represent a lack of trying or I think just we just want to recognize and be real that we can make our best commitments and know that we're in a learning space. With that being said, I think we're learning from that process. I think moving forward, the recommendations that Cody shared in that most recent slide around the areas of focus, those are tied to sort of an analysis of those activities within the action area. And those are the things that I would hope we focus on. I think it goes without saying that as we transition into this next phase for the council, we have additional departments coming on board, and just we're really looking forward to continuing to integrate and build upon the wonderful work that this council has laid the groundwork for. And so truly, I think it really is about augmenting and adding to what is here, and also making sure that the action plan continues to be a focal point for this next chapter for the council. Secretary, anything to add to that, Cody?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that was an excellent question, Council Member Jennifer Loving. And frankly, I think this is a good question for council members because this plan and this report was really shaped by all of you. And I know there's tremendous progress that has been captured here. I agree with Julie that as we look at the next iteration of the council through the California Interagency Council on Homelessness, and as we bring in additional departments, we will have really an opportunity to look at the plan and prioritize. And maybe just the one thing that I would say is we were very aspirational and very ambitious. And we also, you'll recall that we also leaned in on creating subcommittees or working groups to help advance the overall plan, and had a timeline for getting those committees up and running. We have, of course, instituted the funding committee that's looking at how we're sort of co-investing or how dollars are being deployed. We have yet to, we're in the process of setting up the other committees, and maybe we were a bit ambitious in terms of the timeline, given everything that is going on. So as we go into 2022, I do think it'll be important for us to recalibrate and prioritize. And so, yes, so more to come on that.
As I asked you that, I thought, you're right, like what we're worried about, right? We're all probably worried about the same things. I know we're worried about, just now that a lot of these protections and resources have gone away. It feels like we're just underwater. And I'll say the other thing I'm worried about is, and I see this happening in other jurisdictions as well, as we're advancing home key projects, bringing home key projects forward. We know, I understand we're applying, right? But as we're advancing those to go through the local process, the amount of community opposition is at an all-time high. It has been, I've been doing this a long time, and it has been shocking how vicious the anti sort of solutions rhetoric has been at every elected official meeting. It's been really, and so those thinking about that and how we make progress, it's really worrisome.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing that. I think it's really important, right? Of course, as we continue to implement these programs, that we understand what's happening on the ground. So very much appreciate you sharing that with us. And I know, Josh from HED has joined us, and HED is leading the charge on the traditional home key, right? Home key 2.0. So do we have any other council members that would like to weigh in here?
Thank you. I just wanted to maybe add a couple of comments and echo what Jennifer said. And I know it's a later agenda item, and I apologize, I have to hop off early. But first of all, I just wanted to say to staff, like, tremendous work. I think we should really be proud. And besides just the increased staffing, Julie, you coming on board, this is the first ever action plan. So I really want to, commend the staff for all of that. I think moving forward, one question I have, and I apologize, I won't be part of the conversation, but I can ask Jennifer or someone to debrief with me is, I think one key thing in this plan was, and I understand and support the changes to the council, but you had practitioners and folks on the ground sitting in this capacity. And so I just hope that advisory is very different than having authority, which this council has. So I just hope we find a way in the channel to have that feedback loop moving forward to the new council, to the Interagency Council on Homelessness and the plan. As an illustrative example, if we were staying on the council, I'd want to work and ask our partners at HCD to be maybe more firm. There is a CEQA exemption, other exemptions in Home Key 2.0, but they're interpretive to the jurisdiction. So we're seeing in the 9 Bay Area counties, even at the city level, that one city might be very liberal and saying you're absolutely exempt moving forward. And then the next city says, oh no, that's not the way the regulations read. We still need to go through this community process. And I think you'll only get that feedback loop by having practitioners have some capacity. Maybe there's a capacity for the community members on this council to be more looped in moving forward in a different way. But I just hope we don't lose that, because I think that's made the plan so rich and the feedback so important.
Yeah, and Gail, thank you for that, and Jennifer as well. This is Josh from HCD. I think that we'll intend to, and certainly will, lean heavily on this advisory committee and really welcome your thoughts. And I am thinking in particular about Home Key right now, and I'm particularly persuaded by Jennifer, your characterization of what's happening in communities. And with Home Key, as I believe a lot of folks know, we are conducting a series of pre-application consultations with all the local communities who are interested. It was, we did the same thing with the first Home Key. We're doing it again now. And I think that we're also picking up on a level of community opposition, which creates some barriers to these projects happening. But in the course of those consultations, we assist the applicant or prospective applicant with a whole series of technical questions with applications, but we also want to make available best practices guidance in terms of community engagement and what are some of the recurring barriers that we see cropping up, and then what are the types of approaches that tend to help resolve them. Because if there's a successful problem solution sequence, like a pattern that we see kind of solving for these, obviously that's what we want to start socializing. So I think Jennifer or Gail, like when you're like in your practice and any strategies that you want to relay to us can be helpful for us in our communications with an expansive field of applicants in Home Key, and potentially could extend to other programs as well. So thank you for that. And yeah, do be expecting us to be pestering you heavily in the future.
We have done organizing to bring out positive speakers. And so I can talk with you about that, how we've been organizing just a lot of, especially we're activating within the neighborhoods where the proposals are being slated. And so I'll put a link in the chat about that. And then I posted some of the links just so, I mean, you can hear the negativity, but I will say that the fact that this is being pushed from the state is actually really helpful. If we didn't have some of the barriers that are traditionally make things even harder for us removed, then I can't imagine. So that in and of itself has been immensely helpful. But it is, Josh, it's a fever pitch that it's startling. It's startling.
Yeah, I actually, and I will just say, and I know it might be bigger than this council, the more the state can be directive, actually, in this area, which is an odd thing for me to say, but to say to jurisdictions, and also, jurisdictions who are doing this, but I also would love and hope this council would ask this question. This is my last meeting as a community member, but I would love to know the communities that are not applying for home key applications, and have Julie and her team benchmark that against their 2019 or 2020 pick counts to try to understand too why folks are not engaging in the program. To me, I would hope you'd be completely oversubscribed, particularly with interim housing being an allowable use. So just those, sort of just also questioning, what are the barriers? And that could be, I think, is community opposition, resources, and not owning the problem. So I think the more the state can be directive, I think it's, great that it was in the press. And I will say this, that HCD is looking into San Francisco not approving their latest housing project. But the more the state, I think, can force jurisdictions to move forward with these processes and with building and with sheltering our unsheltered brothers and sisters, I think it gives an out to the local electeds and the local jurisdictions. And I think it's the role the state should be playing.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Director Tokes Omishakin, do you want to weigh in? Yes.
Yes, just very briefly. Thank you, Secretary. I just want to thank Cody and everybody who worked on the action plan. Indeed, very comprehensive. A lot's been done since this council's been put together, and in particular last year. So thank you for that report. Just following up on fellow council member Loving's comment about the negative communication that's out there. I think one of the things that's probably incumbent upon us, nevertheless, is to share how much positive there is out there as well. The resources you mentioned, Secretary, 22 billion, and particularly very close to us to 12 billion. I'm on this committee, on this council, and I don't know myself, and it's probably largely my fault and my responsibility, but I can't tell you where the $12 billion, what the breakdown is of that money, where those resources would go. I know Roomkey is getting additional support, but for us all to be able to say, look, we got $12 billion of the 22, here are the buckets of where this money is going to go, each one of the key areas for the state to tackle, and here's how NGOs, local partners can have access to these resources. I think it's something we, in this coming year, I think we should all be very adept at communicating. And I'm in transportation, so I'm not always going to know the latest details on that. But in my communications with the administration, there's a lot of excitement, obviously, about the resources being approved. But I think it's important that we make sure, despite the noise that's not focused on solutions, that we focus on solutions and say, hear you and all the chatter, but here's how we're trying to solve this problem, and here are the resources that we think will help along the way.
Thank you for that. I think it's so important that we be more specific about how are these dollars advancing solutions, and then what is the impact of those dollars? How many people are moving into stable, affordable housing and services? And I think that's a really important point for us to consider as we create, or as we ready ourselves for this new council, thinking more strategically about how we're communicating the breadth and scope of all of the work that is happening across the state, and not just in terms of dollar amounts, but in terms of what does this mean to people and what does this mean to communities? So I appreciate that comment. That's
yes, definitely.
Any other comments?
Yeah, Corinne from California Department of Social Services. I would like to just echo another thanks to Julie and Cody for the great work. I saw some of the early versions where there were just an incredible number of activities that have happened, and how well you were able to cull them into the priorities you were able to share today. Just want to also thank, we've been busy at the state, but want to thank our county and city partners, and then our community-based organizations, and then the direct service workers who are on the ground every day, connecting with the people experiencing homelessness and helping navigate them towards housing. So I want to say an appreciation, because everything in the action plan ultimately comes down to those direct service workers who are doing this work. I want to thank them. And I just wanted, in terms of looking to the future, really excited. At the last meeting, I was able to present with Zach Olmsted from HCD and Julie about our work around the state funding work group and the coordination underway. And when I look to the investments that we're going to be working closely with the council on over the next few years, I think that state coordination is going to be increasingly important as we aim to serve the whole person and to break down silos, both at the state and the local level. So thank you again to HCFC for the great work on this action plan.
Thank you so much for those comments. This is an action item, and because it's an action item, we will also be accepting comments from the public. And if council members are okay, we can move maybe to public comment at this point. I'll turn it over to Evan, and then we'll come back to vote on this item. Go ahead, Evan. Yes.
I'd love to just provide one more comment, which I think is appropriate to follow Corinne's, because I think I wanted to highlight that I think, a really important role for the council and the departments that's reflected in the action plan is that of a convener and a clearinghouse for information and best practices. I guess I wanted to follow Corinne because I feel like Department of Social Services really did a spectacular job of that when it came to Project Roomkey. Being able to pull together the cities and the practitioners to share best practices and to lift up challenges and to suggest solutions. It's great to hear HCD say that they're thinking along those same lines for Home Key, because we're creating lots of really fantastic programs, but California is a really diverse state. And, I think the solutions need to get customized to localities. So I think we end up in this place where lots of different communities are doing lots of different things. So for the state to really play a critical role in helping to give lots of different jurisdictions and practitioners access to information about what's going on in different places is a really important role. So I think that that's reflected in the action plan, and just wanted to highlight that that's really important work for the council and for the departments to continue to pursue.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, Evan.
Yes, Secretary. So for public comment, if there's any member of the public who wishes to make a comment, please press the raised hand icon in your meeting window. Or if you're connected by telephone only, you can press *9 to indicate that you'd like to comment. You'll then have up to 3 minutes to make your comment. And I'll give about 20 or 30 seconds just to see if any comments come in. And then we will take comments in the order those hands come up. All right, Secretary, it looks like we have no public comments on this item.
Okay. Seeing that there are no public comments, we can now move to further discussion. Any additional comments or questions? And if not, we can move to a motion from the council. This is an action item, and so essentially the motion would be to approve the adoption of the HCFC action plan report with the updates that have been incorporated. And I would also suggest, building on the comment regarding the importance of communication, that once assuming that this is adopted, that we all do our part to help share this report and maybe do our part in sharing our report with highlighting the contribution of each department and the progress that we're making towards implementing this plan. So with that,
I make a motion to adopt the plan and to communicate it broadly.
fantastic. It's been moved by Councilwoman Gilman
I'll second.
and second by Councilwoman Loving. Okay,
Great. So a roll call for a vote for this item. So a vote to adopt. Council Chair Lourdes Castro Ramirez.
yes.
Council Vice Chair Emilio Ramirez.
Yes.
Councilmember Amy Anderson.
Yes.
Councilmember Russell Atterbury.
Yes.
Councilmember Alexis Berries.
Yes.
Councilmember Gina Bugiri Harrington.
Yes.
Councilmember Corinne Buchanan.
Yes.
Councilmember Gail Gilman.
Yes.
Councilmember Tina Johnson Hall.
Yes.
Councilmember Jody Ketcheside.
Yes.
Councilmember Jennifer Loving.
Yes.
And Councilmember Tokes Omishakin.
Yes.
Yes, we do have unanimous consent on this item. Secretary?
Great, thank you so much, Evan. And again, thank you all so much for making this a real action plan with a lot of great progress and look forward, of course, to the next report in 2022. So with that, we'll move on to item number 5 on the agenda is an opportunity for us to take a step back to reflect on 2021 and all that has been accomplished collectively and of course in partnership with so many stakeholders on the ground. I will go ahead and turn this over to Julie for to lead us in this presentation. Great.
Evan, may I please have the next slide? So some of this was addressed in our last item, but we really want to just take a moment recognizing that this is our last meeting with many of the council members that are present. And first and foremost, just want to express an immense gratitude. It's been an honor to serve under your leadership and execute the wonderful vision and mission that you've put into place. Specifically within the last year, I think the adoption of the action plan for preventing and ending homelessness in California was quite the feat. I do want to connect our actions related to developing the action plan with the comment that Council Member Jennifer Loving mentioned around, and also Gail Gilman mentioned around the importance of our stakeholders, not just here at the state, but across the state in its full diversity and plurality. A couple things to flag is that many of our council members were incredibly active in a process that wasn't readily apparent, I think, in these meetings. In the development of the action plan, we conducted, I think, somewhere in the upwards of 60 to 80 input sessions that were brokered, recommended, identified through members of this council, many of which council members were present in or recommended. And so I think those are the things that really informed the action plan as it stands currently. And so I don't want to undervalue that. You know, the action plan is what it is, but it is the input that we receive both from our council members, our local partners, local governments, to other community stakeholders, researchers, and importantly, individuals with expertise. Also flag that I think, 20 months into a pandemic, it's hard to remember a time when we weren't in this, but also want to flag that this council has held steadfast and has been entirely active and continue to progress actions throughout a pandemic, which I think we can't possibly really understand the gravity of as we're still in the midst of it. I think this really does speak to the earlier comment around the deep partnership that this council represents in relation to our local providers in providing those life-saving services. I just want to make sure that we take a moment to acknowledge that the achievement isn't just the council itself, but it's the work that's an outgrowth of it. Also, as many of you are aware of, and we've discussed in the last couple of meetings, is this historic budget allocation, and what those really do represent are the state's intentions in relation to how we intend to continue to serve people experiencing homelessness, and I think much of which was made possible by various members and departments and council members and folks that are just generally involved within the sphere of HCFC stakeholder network. And finally, much of what was discussed that Cody so aptly shared in regards to the tangible actions that were committed in this year, want to take a moment to celebrate that. I think, I don't want to belabor sort of what I think we're all looking for here is really just to take a moment of reflection and gratitude to be with our fellow council members, to thank you for your work. I think I'll turn it now. This feels like a good time to turn it to back to Secretary, who will share a little bit more about our appreciation and really close up this chapter of our council with our well wishes.
Nicely said there, Julie. This is just closing one chapter. And as I mentioned at the start, the work that this council has done, the speed at which we have been able to move forward, the fact that we have adopted the most comprehensive plan to prevent and end homelessness, a model that other states are looking to follow. The fact that, as Cody summarized, there's been tremendous progress in implementing that plan, and much more that will come as we continue to work together. I think everyone that serves on this council should be very proud of how far we have come in the midst of a very challenging time, right? Very difficult times, continuing to be responsive and nimble and compassionate during this pandemic. And beyond the pandemic, just the disasters, right, that have impacted our state. And yet, as we address kind of the crisis in front of us, we have not lost sight of our desire and our commitment to ensure that everybody has a place to call home, to ensure that individuals and families experiencing homelessness have the ability to move into a safe, stable housing environment with the right level of support. So you all should be very proud of how far we have come. And please know that as we move into this next stage, as we move into the new council, the California Interagency Council on Homelessness, we stand on your shoulders. We will build on the good work of this council and very much appreciate your contributions, your insights, your guidance, and the time and commitment that you brought to this council. And so it is my honor on behalf of Governor Newsom and this administration to present each of you with a certificate of our appreciation in really recognition of the remarkable leadership and the great commitment and collaboration that has been integral to advancing our efforts as a state. I know that this is not easy work, and you all know that this is not easy work, but it's necessary work. And as we close this chapter, please know that we are deeply grateful and appreciative of your contributions. We will be sending a certificate of appreciation to each council member that is transitioning, and also, of course, look forward to following up with each of you as we think about the next iteration of this council. So with that, I will pause here and and see if we have comments, reflections, questions from council members. But again, thank you so much for your contributions and for being part of this council.
Hi, I'm Emilio Ramirez. No real question, just thank you for everything you've done and where you guys are headed. You're doing good work. Keep it up. Thank you.
Thank you, Emilio.
Madam Secretary, I just wanted to say, as a new member to the council, that I am looking forward to 2.0 or 2.2, 22, and the work that we will do. I'm excited to join this. And while I do recognize that there is a lot of opposition, I am part of the core team that is very optimistic about what we can do. And I'm so grateful to join part of this team and be a part of this team, an active member, part of this team. And I'll just share just from my own lens, you know, when I first looked at this, I really wasn't clear on, you know, how we might be able to help. But I think what we will all find is that there is a part that we all can do. We just need to tell that story and magnify and elevate that story in ways that we haven't done it before. And so I'm excited about the future. I thank you for including me in this. And I also want to just thank Madam Secretary for the work that she's done. No one's mentioned that, but it's really hard to herd all these folks into one place at one time. So we congratulate you back for your work that you put it. Just know that it hasn't gone on deaf ears. And I think many of us are excited for the future.
Thank you, Tina.
And if there are no further comments, I do think for the good of the order, I would like to name our outgoing members. There's a lot in the name, and just want to take a moment to recognize each of you. Russell Atterbury, Undersecretary for Calvet, thank you so much. Alexis Berry, Advocate, thank you so much. Gina Bukhari Harrington, Assistant Director of Grants Management for Victim Services Programs, Cal OES, thank you so much. Corinne Buchanan, Assistant Director of Housing and Homelessness, DSS, thank you. I think Don is not with us today, but I'm going to name him anyhow. His transition was at an odd time. Donald Cavier, Chief Deputy Director for the California Housing Finance Agency, thank you. Gail Gilman, Chief Strategy Officer for All Home California, thank you so much, Gail. Jody Ketcheside, Deputy Regional Director for Turning Point of Central California, thank you. Gary McCoy, Congressional Aide for House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, thank you so much. Emilio Ramirez, Housing Director for City of Oxnard, thank you for your work. And finally, Joe Ukashiba, former police officer with the City of Fairfield, thank you. And if we can, would council members mind turning on your camera so that we can take a photo? Oh, my apologies. I left a couple folks out. Jennifer Loving, thank you for your work. And Amy Anderson, thank you for your work. My apologies. And if you don't mind turning cameras on, Tokes, I think you might be the only one. I'd love to be able to take an image. Let me see if I can do this. All these new technologies. Here we go. Okay. On the count of three, 1, 2, 3. Got it. Thank you. And just yep. Thank you very much.
No, go ahead, Julie. Were you going to add something?
No, Matt, a little clarification, but I can do it offline.
Okay, and just a clarification on my end, is this also the item for us to report out, for the council members to report out on the reports that were submitted? There's anything to highlight?
So for this agenda, we excluded that.
Okay.
And the written reports are included in the meeting materials.
Got it. Okay. All right. Any additional comments? If not, thank you all so much. We will follow up with certificates and follow up with, we definitely would like to have an opportunity to have staff check in with you about your sort of insights and recommendations as we move into the new council structure. So thank you. We will now move on to item number 6, future meeting agendas. And it looks like we're ahead of schedule. I think this is going to be a first, and we're going to end this meeting early. Okay, so this item is an opportunity for council members to propose items for future council meetings, and we will go ahead and entertain any suggestions. Okay, seeing none, we will go ahead and go to the next item on the agenda, which is item number 7, public comment and final remarks. Public comments. Evan, turning that over to you.
Thank you, Secretary. If any member of the public wishes to make a comment at this time, please press the raised hand icon on your screen. Or if you're connected by telephone only, you can press *9. You'll then have up to 3 minutes to make your comment. Looks like we do have a comment from Deborah Villasenor. I hope I'm pronouncing that right.
Yes, thank you, Evan. Hi, everyone. Thank you for your great work. I do want to say that due to COVID and having remote meetings, it's actually been easier for stakeholders to participate in these meetings. I know I have, and I thank you all for that. But I also want to note that you want to hear from folks what's happening on the ground. And I have a question for you. I work as a housing consultant in Northern California. I work with small and medium-sized counties. And as you all know, that HCD just released the last round of No Place Like Home on October 29th. And I have not heard any talk or discussion about future funding for No Place Like Home. And I'm concerned that that's not on the forefront of folks' minds about how they're going to go forward and continue funding this great program. I think it's got an excellent track record. I want to express that I've been working in permanent supportive housing for 14 years. I was under the Mental Health Services Act program and then over to the No Place Like Home. I want you to know I've experienced the growth from all these counties and how they've learned about affordable housing, how they have educated their community members, other stakeholders, as well as Board of Supervisors about the need for affordable housing for folks with serious mental illness who are homeless. They've actually developed partnerships and relationships with affordable housing developers to incorporate these programs, permanent supportive housing, into their projects. And so there's been a lot of capacity building and time and effort to build momentum to get permanent supportive housing built in both rural and medium-sized counties. And I hate to see that fall away. We need to continue the momentum. And I hope that maybe that's one of the items on your future agendas in January 2022. What is going to happen as far as future funding allocation for No Place Like Home, so we can keep this great work going forward. We can't afford to have a big lag of time because partnerships fall away, and we really can't afford to have that happen. The other thing I want to comment on that's on the agenda is somehow the state, if you can come up with a creative way to develop your own project-based voucher program, maybe you can match housing authorities that have project-based voucher programs and that support our projects, especially the premise supportive housing projects with project-based vouchers, because there's just not enough money out there for those important operations. You embrace housing first, and you want us to accept folks where they are, and that means they have probably very low to no income. So we really do need to have operation dollars and project-based vouchers to help serve individuals
Thank
who
you for your
have very
comment.
little.
Your time is complete. Please make your final comment.
Okay, so anyways, I just wanted to give, if you can comment on No Place Like Home, I'd really appreciate it, and look at ways of developing more operating dollars. I thank you all for your good work. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. And I do want to note that the council may only discuss items that are already on the agenda, or whether or not to consider to place them on a future agenda. Unfortunately, cannot respond directly to comments that are not on agenda items. We have a comment from Tim Houchin or Houchin. Tim, you have 3 minutes.
That's Tim Houchin. Thank you.
Thank you.
I serve on the Orange County Continuum of Care Board, and I'm also chairman of the Anaheim Housing and Community Development Commission. Formerly homeless and a strong supporter of housing first policies and the moving on strategies. I have concern for more than 1,000 recipients of the emergency home vouchers from HUD in Orange County and many thousands more across the state that may not be being provided with the necessary service to help them to remain permanently and stably housed. HUD mandates are clear about the responsibilities for jurisdictions to provide navigation services to EHV recipients, but only encourages jurisdictions to provide additional supportive services, and they're leaving that responsibility to the public housing authorities. Now, HUD doesn't provide funding for those services, and the PHAs, at least in Orange County, are not accustomed to providing any supportive services whatsoever in the past. And under these circumstances, there's little expectation that EHV recipients will have access to the services that they need. The EHVs issued by HUD present a tremendous opportunity to serve our unhoused populations, but without necessary services and support that promotes housing stability, we can expect opportunity for failure and also increased recidivism. I'm looking to the council to provide some type of guidance regarding how standard for providing supportive service can be established in relation to these EHVs, and oversight to make sure that standards are being upheld. Actions by the council might include the possibility of providing emergency funding to ensure that supportive services will be available for families and individuals that receive EHVs. A timely response is critical in order to create a solution for a problem that only manifests itself when it's too late to help unstable households at stake of losing their housing vouchers and at risk of becoming homeless once again. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. I'm not seeing any additional public comments at this time.
Okay, thank you very much, Evan. And thank you all so much for joining us, to the two individuals that provided public comment. Thank you for your suggestions and for your comments. There are, of course, members of the council that will follow up, and we very much appreciate your participation today. And so now we move to the final item on the agenda, which is adjournment. Just again, as we adjourn today's meeting, which I think is a first since I've been on board, I believe our meetings are traditionally about 3 hours long, but we were very efficient today. Thank you again, council members, for your work, for your thought leadership, and for what you do every single day to ensure that everyone has a place to call home. The materials, of course, of this meeting and the meeting summary will be posted on the council's website. Of course, we have a number of resources and information available on the HCFC website, which is basically at www.ecsh.ca.gov/HCFC. For those of you that are not joining us through video, we do have a slide presentation that has the information. You can also follow us on social media, on Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn. There are some positions that HCFC is hiring for, and so any of you that have joined us today that are interested in joining the dynamic council team, please look us up on LinkedIn. And with that, I just want to, as we begin the holiday season, Thanksgiving will be here before you know it, and then the end of the year. May you all have a safe holiday season, a safe and healthy holiday season, and thank you for your many contributions. And we stand adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.